the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, it's just the Tip-Sters with Melissa Morgan.
I said good day, sir.
If you've got a tip for Melissa, a murder mystery in your hometown, an unsolved case you haven't heard about in a while, why they call it pomegranate juice and not pomegranate seed juice, anything, tell us about it by calling the Tipster hotline at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837. Or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com. You just might hear your tip on the podcast. And now here's your host, your soul sister of serial slaying, sleuthing, Melissa Morgan.
And more cowbell. Wow, producer Mark. At first I wanted to chastise you about the pomegranate comment because it is the juice of the pomegranate seeds, you boob. But then you did such an amazing job of the seashells, she sells seashells sleuthing by the seashore.
Almost.
You did a great job.
I couldn't quite get sleuthing out, but you know.
Well, that's a lot of, crazy consonants all together. That's tough. I feel like you did a stellar job. So now I will not yell at you about the pomegranate juice comment.
Well, but why do they call it pomegranate juice? It's pomegranate seed juice.
It's the juice of the pomegranate seed.
I know. So why don't they call it
Oh, for fuck's sake. Of all the things in the world to worry about,
I need a tipster to tell me why they call it.
Oh my God. I swear to God, if anyone emails or calls the Tipster hotline or emails us at jttipsters@gmail.com, I will have you killed.
Well, no, you mean if they do that, if they do those things with my answer. Because we want other tips.
Oh, yeah, we do want other tips. Sorry, I should have clarified. If anyone writes or calls in with pomegranate juice details, shit's going to get ugly. That's all I'm saying. It's going to get real ugly.
You're no fun.
I am no fun. I am no fun today. It's no fun Saturday for Melissa. No fun.
Okay.
No fun. I actually had a lovely beginning part of the day. I teach a wonderful yoga class in Silver Lake, a beautiful hipster area of the east part of LA. And after the class, thank the good sweet Lord, I had a nosebleed of epic proportions. I have really crappy sinuses and my nostrils get dry, and you have the occasional nosebleed, like 1 or 2 a year, and you're like, okay, this one wouldn't stop the pouring. It was crazy, and at first I was just like, oh, my nose is running, except it would not stop, and it splashed on my cute shirt. And I happen to have a little beautiful purple glitter unicorn that I ironed on. That was a gift. It's lovely. And the owner of the yoga studio is so fabulous. She's like, oh, look, there's blood on your unicorn horn. I'm like, yeah,
looked like the unicorn impaled somebody.
It did. It looked like the unicorn went on a stabbing spree with his horn. But hopefully we'll get that all out of there because it was, yeah. So other than that, it's been a relatively wonderful day. And this was not the episode I wanted to do today. I wanted to do something different, but an unusual and wonderful and bizarre situation happened yesterday that I felt like needed to be addressed. And it is involving the Golden State Killer, as apparently way too many things in my life are. So this is part 4 of the Golden State Killer coverage. I'm calling it No Plea and a Shitload of Evidence because, hoo boy, and it's interesting stuff here to me, and the sources are just overwhelming to me. That, of course, the San Francisco Chronicle is doing an amazing job, and I'm just so impressed at the LA Times that has done a spectacular job. Some of those articles are quoted here today, as well as the Washington Post. Just fascinating stuff. Once the 171-page arrest and search warrant came out, I think a lot of people took time to really dissect it and find some of the more interesting things, which some of the things are going to appear here. So the last part of this will be some information from social media, which of course is difficult to take in all seriousness and hoping to check sources and make sure everything is legit, but pretty interesting stuff. So this attack it was unknown to me. With all the research, I was unfamiliar with this, and perhaps because it didn't involve a rape or a murder, but I feel like he was thwarted in this attack. But it was the second known attack, and it was in Sacramento early in the morning, July 16th of 1976. There was a man who was on his way to work, and earlier in the morning, like around 3:30, he'd heard some footsteps in the backyard by his pool, and he looked out the window and there was no one there. You know, he heard a few noises, but then he just didn't go out to investigate, probably thinking it was an errant animal or something. So it's still dark outside and it's 5:00 and he's going to work, and he walks to his garage and he hits the button to open the garage door, and he's attempting to get in his car and he hears footsteps behind him. And he's like, what? And he looks under the garage door, and in the gap between the garage door and the floor, he sees a pair of hiking boots, and he's like, oh, that's weird. And then he notices that the man is charging at him. He ducks under the door and comes straight for him. And the man is standing standing beside his car with the driver's door open. The man has on a ski mask and gloves, and he has this crazy makeshift club. It was like a broom handle with crazy padding taped on it, I guess to, offset the glancing blows he had hoped to deliver, but he didn't. So the homeowner's trying to get in his car, but there wasn't time. And, he's attempting to hit him with the crazy bat, and he crawls under his car to get away from the blows. The intruder tries to yank him out, and he ends up pulling his pants half the way off. And then he leaves, taking nothing but the man's wallet, which he'd gotten out of his pocket after he'd pulled his pants half the way off. So this guy was very fortunate, because what had happened is his daughter had moved out a few weeks before this attack happened. And what had happened was the East Area rapist / Golden State Killer was casing the place, saw that he had an attractive daughter, thought he'd come in and, beat the shit out of the dad on his way to work, and then, rape his daughter. But he was, denied.
Jesus, I hadn't heard that.
I had not heard this one. And it's in the arrest warrant. It's amazing, the list of
wow,
crazy stuff. This next one's really disgusting. So the Brian and Katie Majori, who were the first two that they thought were related to this whole series of over 120 ransackings and robberies, over 50 rapes, and added to the 12, actually now 13, since he has been charged with in the death of Claude Snelling in 1975. So in 1978, Katie and Brian Majori are, walking their dog in Cordova Meadows, which is, in Northern California, Rancho Cordova. And it was thought it was such a haphazard event, not meticulously planned, brutally personal. That's why they were looking at perhaps it was someone who knew Brian Majori as a military police officer, someone who perhaps was stalking Katie. I think that it was just they stumbled upon a peeping asshole who was trying to case places for future offenses. So it was, it was sloppy. So oddly, in the same neighborhood, just a few blocks from Brian and Katie Majori, this young couple had come home one night several weeks before Katie and Brian are murdered, and their house is broken into. And the only thing missing is the wife's underwear. So when they're broken into a second time, nothing is taken. However, the woman keeps finding shoe prints in the yard, and the gate is constantly left open. And more disturbingly, in the police report, she finds drawings on her bedroom window that have been written in, quote, bodily fluids, end
for
quote.
God's sake.
So I'm sure he considers himself an artist. I mean, it's,
Holy moly.
he really has arrested development. I mean, you hear about kids, boys peeing their name in the snow or something. It's more difficult for girls because you can't aim it correctly. It's going to just look like really bad, sloppy cursive. But to leave your quote unquote DNA in a drawing on a woman's bedroom window, you got to be kind of a special kind of motherfucker.
What was he drawing? Do we know?
Well, they didn't, say it looked like, Monet's water lilies. I don't know, Mark. It wasn't, does it matter?
No.
It's like,
Well, it might say something about him if he drew something gross or.
perhaps it's a peace sign or a flower or a heart. I love you in my jizz. I don't know what they didn't mention. All they mentioned was, in quotes, bodily fluids.
Ugh.
Yeah. Good times. I mean, you're never going to get over that. No matter who you are, if he has not, made entrance into your home and done something to you actually physically, it's not going to be something you forget. Hey, some dude jizzed on my window with his initials. Joseph James D'Angelo loves, blank redacted name.
Be mine.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
because inside a little heart.
Yeah, he didn't have a knife to carve it in a tree, so he figured he'd leave it in his jizz on our window. I just am so. The more I find out, the more horrified I am, and I know we'll just keep finding more things out. That's why this is an update to the first 3 episodes. This one is just...
Oh, yeah. There's going to be many more episodes, I think.
Oh, I'm sure of that. But there are some updates that have happened that I felt probably needed to be talked about. So I did not understand exactly how GEDmatch worked. So GEDmatch is a no-frills open source website. So they fill in the gaps by allowing users to upload all of their raw data from other sites. So if you're using Ancestry.com or 23andMe, you can, it's a free service. You can upload the rest of that information to GEDmatch. And it's typically something that's utilized only by like genealogy buffs. But that's how he was captured. God bless Paul Holes for being, so determined to put him in any kind of goddamn DNA. He was never going to appear in CODIS because he wasn't going to do anything to get himself arrested and, in a felony in the last several years of his pitiful fucking life. So I think it was just a brilliant idea. So the info then becomes like a standardized data set, and then it's cross-referenced with other uploads. And that's what happened is fourth cousin twice removed, who's a genealogy buff, uploaded her information, and then it's, hey, we got a hit to this goddamn asshole. So according to GEDmatch, they're not affiliated with any other testing company. So a volunteer, and this is from the San Francisco Chronicle, a volunteer for GEDmatch, and she, we're obviously going to have a much longer discussion about this later, but she kind of pisses me off. The genealogy community has mixed feelings about how it's being used. This volunteer, Kitty Rogers, is quoted in the San Francisco Chronicle as saying, "We were excited this guy was caught." This guy? Yeah, Kitty, you should be excited. But we think if the results are going to be used, we just wanted to know up front. I'm going to say the same thing about that other people are going to say about the use of genealogy websites. If you're afraid that law enforcement, the government, insurance companies are going to use your information for ill, to deny you coverage, to arrest you for, whatever, you should be afraid of genealogy websites who, if you were notified that the police are looking for something, may put up some subterfuge and hide people's DNA. There just ought to be fucking transparency across the fucking board. The fact that Paul Holes had to create a name, a username, a profile of a random dude he made up, entering the most awful human being's DNA in a website, this is all too much for my brain, and my brain's going to explode. And again, I know we're going to have longer discussions later, and the ACLU has probably put me on their hit list, and I don't care. I don't care. If you do something wrong, you do something wrong. If you don't, put your fucking DNA in and shut up. And it's not forced yet, so we don't have to upload our DNA. If you're a genealogy buff and one of your relatives is the Golden State Killer, tough shit. Tough shit. God, this is obviously an issue I have problems with. And I know producer Mark is in there biting his tongue directly in half. Aren't you, sir?
This is your podcast, darling.
Are you going to start your own podcast? Producer Mark's Save the DNA podcast?
No, I'm a libertarian
yes, you are.
person, and I don't necessarily disagree with you.
Yeah, kinda.
No, let's just say that I'm still taking it under advisement.
That's good. That's good. That's very judicious of you. I like that. That's a good answer. It doesn't make me angry at you, and you can have all the wonderful feelings that you want that you will later on punch out in a pillow, because I refuse to discuss this. So, all right. So the timeline was interesting to me because I thought the DNA was collected all at once, and it didn't work out that way because you need a real pure sample. So the timeline in this that was explained actually in the LA Times is fascinating to me. So he had been under surveillance since March after the Jed match. They had been surveilling him and several other people, but him because of age, location, geography, previous employment as a police officer, military training, etc. So he was in the top, 10, let's say, and he didn't leave the house too often. So they did follow him to Hobby Lobby on April 18th. So he was going to get some new scrapbooking shit. I don't know what he's done. Fucking asshole. So they follow him to the Hobby Lobby and they retrieve the DNA off of his door handle from his 2014 white Toyota Camry. So it's good that he has a very stable, solid car. We want him to be able to get away quickly now because he's older. He can't be biking through, shit. So it was a pretty close match, but they needed more. So then on April 23rd, they removed a tissue from his home trash can. So that's, 5 days later. It took 5 days to get a second sample. And he's under 24/7 surveillance, I'm going to guess. So they removed the tissue from his home trash can, hoping to get something more conclusive. And because he'd been surveilled so closely, he was the only male to enter and leave that house in Citrus Heights. And they got a conclusive male DNA profile that matched all of the DNA he's left blatantly all over his victims and on windows in the shape of a heart, or like a Picasso, during Picasso's blue mood, or whatever the F he was doing with his DNA. And then he was taken into custody on April 24th and officially booked at 2:29 a.m. on April 25th.
I'm sorry, I may have missed it. Did they say what they got in his trash that they tested?
A tissue.
A tissue, okay.
It had, this is weird, and I didn't want to say this, but now that you brought it up, conclusively one male DNA profile and 2 other female profiles. So his daughter and granddaughter who are living with him, perhaps he makes them share tissues. I don't know.
Man, this whole thing is just gross.
I know.
Everything is gross.
I know. Maybe he's like very cheap. Like, look, I only used it once. You two use it for your noses or whatever. I can't. I can't. So of the 170-page arrest and search warrant, and it is pretty fascinating, a lot of it is redacted, which was not asked for by the DA, of course, but 95% of the redactions were asked for by his amazing court-appointed attorney. Looks like his public defender now is a male named David Lynch, and he tells the LA Times that much of the evidence is, in quotes, speculative.
Hold on. His attorney's name is David Lynch.
Yeah.
Continue.
And there is a horse walking backward and a midget that appear in court.
With some real, like, funky Fender Bender guitar playing, surfer guitar playing in the background.
Sure. Yeah. Yes, I would imagine. But he says the evidence is speculative. I have seen nothing in the 170-page arrest and search warrant that is speculative. They have spent so much time dotting every I and crossing every T, because the DA actually said, it quoted Benjamin Franklin, "A ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure." So they are really trying to do everything so overwhelmingly correct that there's nothing that this, public defender can dispute. It's pretty overwhelming. But they have redacted, this is the part that broke my heart directly in half, 75 surviving victims. 75.
Yeah, that I saw that.
75 surviving victims. And GEDmatch is worried about sharing DNA information. I don't get it. If you rape and murder, your DNA should be available to anyone who can decipher it. I don't get. Okay, breathing. So Legal Eagle producer Mark looked up for me because I'm stumped. He did not enter a plea when he appeared in court on Friday, April 25th. He did not enter a plea when he appeared in court in May and June. He has another court date in July, and his public defender said he will not be entering a plea at that time. So I was sort of under a soft impression that there was a time limit because, every defendant is supposed to receive a speedy trial. You're supposed to be able to address your accusers quickly and not have it drag out. However, with the dearth of information and the years and decades of offenses, I understood why this would take a longer time than I thought. And even, Detective Paul Holes has given it about a 5-year window. He thinks it may be 5 years before it even sees the light of day in court. But I thought at some point you had to at least fucking enter a plea. So Legal Eagle producer Mark found this for me in the California Penal Code. It's Rule 4.100.
Oh, and just to be clear, it's not the penal code. It is the California Rules of Court.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
California Rules of, although it says Penal Code Section 987.1.
Right, it links to it. But
okay.
Yes.
Okay, so it's the California Rules of Court. Is that what it's called?
Yes. What happens is I'll try not to be too boring, but when
too late.
when legislation is passed and
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, what?
When legislation is passed and statutes exist, there are laws and frameworks that the courts need to abide by. But the court then can set rules. The rules of court, the California Supreme Court can set, and local superior courts can set their own rules for how the law is administered, and that's what the rules of court. This is throughout the state of California that this applies to.
Okay, so Rule 4.100 under arraignments. At the arraignment on the information or indictment, unless otherwise ordered for good cause, and on a plea of not guilty, including a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, number 1, the court must set dates for A, trial, giving priority to a case entitled to it under law, and B, filing and service of motions and responses and hearing thereon. Number 2, a plea of not guilty must be entered if a defendant represented by counsel fails to plead or demur. And 3, an attorney may not appear specially. I don't really get what that means. So he apparently, according to Legal Eagle Mark, he demurred.
I'm thinking he either demurred or there's that that little thing at the very beginning, unless otherwise ordered for good cause.
Meaning the dearth of information?
Yeah, the lawyer may have convinced the court that there is good cause to delay the entering of a plea.
Well, that's what the first public defender, the female, who I despised with a white-hot passion. And I believe that even though I'm sure she's a lovely person, she couldn't help it. She was next up on the lottery board. She got to show up and ruin a Friday for herself by having to, although she was kind to him, and I, instead of patting his shoulder and leaning over to talk in his elderly ear, I would have taken a screwdriver and jammed it through his ear. But then again, that's why I'm not a public defender.
Well, that's just you.
That's me. What do you mean just me? I bet you there's a couple of us that would do that.
Yeah, there's probably several hundred, several thousand.
Considering one of the most beautiful articles from the San Francisco Chronicle listed a rape victim who preferred to be anonymous and said she would be at every one of his court dates, sitting behind him, hoping to drill holes in his head with her eyes. So no, I'm not alone. And I was never a victim, but I'm not alone. So the other thing that's kind of interesting is that his wife has finally come forward. It says Sharon Huddle, who's been cooperating with investigators, requested a statement be released on her behalf through the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department. Quote, "My thoughts and prayers are with the victims and their families. The press has relentlessly pursued interviews of me. I will not be giving any interviews for the foreseeable future. I ask the press to please respect my privacy and that of my children," close quote. And I feel bad for her. I genuinely feel bad for her. Howevs, I mean, it's probably legally better that she not talk. And, you know, she's an attorney. I get it. She's a divorce attorney. So I'm not sure how she hasn't divorced him yet, but I guess there's some reason for that. I don't know. So if you have not, and I'm sure the entire search and arrest warrant is available online. I'm insane, and I printed out all of it, you know, asking producer Mark for a new ream of paper, which he kindly
I need to go out and buy a new one for myself now.
Because I took your last ream of paper.
You're using up a lot of paper there, but that's all right.
Sorry.
It's fascinating.
It does feel like it's worth it to me, I got to be honest. And while there are quite a bit of redactions, which I also understand, the time and effort that took to get this, I'm hoping there's a whole lot of things you can copy and paste, because what they were asking for, although it does seem very specific, they specifically describe the house, the street that it's on, the residence faces north, dark brown trim on the eaves. I mean, I think they just want to, again, every single detail they want to be correct, so that there's just no way that any of this could be thrown out. So some of the things asked for, trace evidence, including blood, skin, body tissue, body fluids, hair, saliva, clothing fibers, lint, carpet, upholstery samples, any firearms. They asked for specific ones that were redacted, potentially used in some of the cases. Any expended slugs, spent casings, bullet holes, ammunition, magazines, gun, cleaning kits, any gun purchase receipts, registration papers, holsters, guns, gun cases, bindings, including but not limited to rope, string, shoelaces, line, cord, any financial documents leading to establish if the motive for the homicides was ever for financial gain. An amazing list of things: telephone directories, address books, ID cards, photographs, anything that would identify friends or associates or family members of the persons that, you know, had been murdered or raped. This is my favorite part, because I, quite frankly, being technologically, you know, backward, had no clue some of these things even still existed. But digital storage devices, including but not limited to computers, computer hard drives, computer storage media, including compact discs, DVDs, removable storage devices, digital cameras, personal digital assistants, i.e., Palm Pilot, BlackBerry, etc., digital audio recorders, any writings, paper medium, notebooks, loose paper sheets, any computing or data processing software stored on any type of medium such as hard disk, floppy disk, cassette disk, compact disk, RAM, ROM units, any permanent or transient storage medium, any computing or data processing device, any associated peripheral equipment, including but not limited to computer units, keyboards, video display tubes, printers, hard disk drives, floppy diskettes, optical diskettes, interconnection cables and modems, whether acoustic or electric, any computing or data processing literature, including instruction books, manuals, or listed computer programs in whole or part for the above computer or data processing equipment, any records which show dominion, ownership, control of any of these items, including a bill of sale for computers or modems, repair bills for computers or modems, any sales receipts for floppy disks, and the deputies are permitted to conduct a detailed search of all of the electronic contents of these digital storage devices through the means of forensic examination.
It's that this is like being at work. I deal with civil litigation. That sounds like a request for production of documents in a civil case. Very, very similar.
It's very fascinating to me. Very fascinating. Now, the next page 52, you are also to locate and search for the following: Joseph James D'Angelo, his date of birth, his age, his address, and the following property: major case fingerprints, biological material from D'Angelo's person, including saliva, blood, skin, and the biological material is to be collected in a non-intrusive manner. Officers are permitted to transport D'Angelo's person to a law enforcement facility so the collection of DNA and major case fingerprints can be performed in a safe and sterile environment. Due to the severity of the crimes committed by the perpetrator, law enforcement personnel request the authority to conduct a limited strip search of the above-mentioned person, i.e., a strip search of the suspect's underwear, in order to ensure the subject is unarmed and all potential weapons have been removed from his body. Here's my favorite. In addition, you are authorized to take photographs of the suspect's entire body, specifically his penis.
Can you say penis in that particular way again?
Specifically his penis.
Oh.
Is that going to be a drop that you're going to add in?
I think I may save that.
You're going to isolate that, and then I'll just be trying to sleep, and in my head I'll specifically penis. Thanks, producer Mark.
Yeah.
So the list of things stolen from homes is 5 pages long and single-spaced and awful. Just such a violation of everything. The things that, of course, are most heartbreaking are the wedding rings, the heirloom rings from, mothers and grandmothers and family members, the watches, the digital cameras, the things he didn't need but took just to really remind someone of the horror of him. And of course, my favorite thing that he took, and everyone is really wondering how this was a possibility, because this was back in the OG days when he was on a bike. He stole a set of china that was covered in casing to protect the china, and we now know it's Noritake, the Polonaise design. It has since been discontinued in 1986, and it is a white with blue and gold floral and scroll. So he has good taste.
Do we know? Is it still around? Did they find it in his place?
Well, that's the thing. I don't know.
We don't know yet.
They, I've heard several things. One, that they did not find anything. They took a lot of stuff out of his home, but they didn't find anything related to any of the crimes yet. That could be wrong. That is something I can't cite a source because that's hearsay on the killery threads. But this is from the search warrant, actually, Noritake, China. So he has good taste. But I'm wondering, and there, because it's discontinued, you can find it. I did do a little search for it online, but it's like $39 a plate. So he has good taste, and he could have made, good money. But a fucking set of china on a bike.
Maybe it was a bike with a basket.
It'd have to be a pretty big basket. That's what I was assuming. I hope it had a little bell, too. Ding, 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 ding. Get out of my way. I just stole some china and raped some people. Ding, ding. If you don't get out of my way, I'll kill you. Ding, ding,
just in
ding,
that
ding,
voice.
ding.
His voice is pretty much that high, though.
I think it's actually higher. Typically, everyone thinks I'm a dude. I'm guessing everyone thinks he's a chick. So the last part of this update is the part that happened yesterday and was so overwhelming to me, I felt like it had to be discussed. And a lot of people do not find interest in the psychopathy of someone who does the things that Joseph James DeAngelo did. Now, a lot of people are not exactly defending him, but are saying, he watched his sister be raped as a young child. We actually do not know if that's true. It's a story. It could have very well happened. It may not have happened. It was in Korea when they were transferred there with his father in the military, and his older sister, who has since passed away, had been apparently raped by several GIs. We don't know if that's true. And that's a young, impressionable age. I don't want to debate that. There is also a lot of people who are saying, he could have had a head injury. Yeah, he could have. I think a lot of kids get head injuries and they don't grow up to rape and murder. And I understand the brain is a fascinating thing and we don't have all of the answers. No matter how much research that has been done, so much more needs to be done. And that will be very interesting, to find out things like that. But I don't care. I don't care. I don't know one human being who has not had trauma or tragedy in their human existence, because it's part of being a human. And your version of trauma and tragedy may be very, very different from mine and from the guy next door or the woman down the street. These things are personal to each individual human, but it doesn't give you the right to violate another human being's body, take another human being's life. It just doesn't. It just doesn't. Ever. So when this brave human being came forward in one of the social media pages that I am a member of, I was overwhelmed. I feel like the admin handled it spectacularly. She is a journalist herself. I asked for permission to use this information in the podcast, and she said, you do not need to ask. You can use it. And he asked to remain anonymous, and it is very interesting to me. So yesterday morning, I woke up to this, and he asked that he remain anonymous, and it is posted under the admin's name. And he says, I want to bring some understanding to the motives of the Golden State Killer, but I don't want my name out there. This is something I've never spoken about in detail to anyone, and please post your comments here. When I was young, I had very intrusive urges, which I'll not detail here. My mind was weaving some violent fantasies. I never spoke about them until recently, and only with my immediate family. This is my first public admission. One night I crawled into a neighborhood master bedroom window. I was in a very titillated state, and yes, titillated is the word. It's the beginning steps of giddiness. The family was in the house, and it was around 8 p.m. I went to the master bedroom and I took a bottle of shampoo. I was in a very giddy state and hyper aware of my senses at this point. I crawled out of the window and went home. I had some other incidents like this in my youth and urges, but I knew what I wanted to do was wrong. The embarrassing part is what stopped me from acting out is the idea of seeing my parents in court, not about the victims in my fantasy. The motive is how the thoughts and the acts impact on my senses. My senses tingled when I had those urges. I felt literally like a carefree tingling something other than my usual self. I can see how that tingling giddiness could be a powerful force. I was also in the Navy and attended a police academy, but I never joined the department and did evolve into a true crime buff. I eventually connected the dots on my behavior and things I went through as a child. At 56 years old, I no longer have those fantasies, and I only share them here to hopefully bring some insight. Now, I was the first person to comment because I was so blown away, and what I said was, very brave of this person to come forward with their experience. I wish we could ask questions. If given the opportunity, name of the admin, could you ask this person if they also experienced any of the 3 behaviors that could portend to future bad behavior? Number 1, enuresis. Number 2, fire starting. And number 3, animal abuse or torture. And if not, I totally understand. I love the fact that this member was concerned for his or her parents. I'm trying to be polite here. His or her parents' reaction and not wanting to disappoint or upset them. The psychopathy of this sort of thought process is fascinating to me, and I'm sure many members of this group. I'm still working out in my head nature versus nurture arguments. So this gentleman responded pretty quickly, and he said, I am crying now. Releasing that to others has been a huge release, and I've been suicidal for years over shame and insecurities. I had minor bedwetting. I did like to start fires, but would set them on small local islands where no one would get hurt. The fire was an extension of myself. When it would become a raging force in my eyes, I would feel like it was talking to me, telling me, see how powerful you are, see how hot and explosive you are. No animal cruelty, but I would catch rats and stab them to death. Their squealing when the knife pierced them created a different kind of giddiness, a very focused heat in my temples. And several people on the page said, as politely and kindly as possible, to not upset someone who is being this open and forthright. I'm interested to know why you don't think stabbing a rat is animal torture. Now, producer Mark had brought up that he wondered if this was true and legit, and the admin said, I have no reason to doubt him, and if he were just getting his jollies, he probably would have continued to engage. But he said, I am overwhelmed. I have to go pick up my girlfriend. I have an event this evening. I will address the rest of this tomorrow. And he left. The use of the word on smaller islands, I feel like he may be in another country, someplace else. So he may not be on the same, time frame as people in California. I don't know.
It's just it's so fascinating to hear this. I know you read this to me yesterday, but hearing it again, it's even more chilling. And the fact is, he did torture animals, and he did get what do you want to call it? Great satisfaction out of it. And
I feel like there probably is more details, but I feel like, I believe Mark's family had a rat as a pet. I've known many people who have rats as pets, say they're extraordinarily smart and kind and loving. I have the feeling he may have used the term rat as a catch-all, wanting it to seem like that he didn't kill, what most people would consider a household pet.
Yeah,
like
a family pet.
a dog or a cat. Yeah. I am with you. Killing a rat is like killing a dog or a human or anything else, unless the rat is trying to kill you and then it's self-defense. But for the most part, rats are going to leave you alone. And, but to me, it felt like a slight justification, almost like you had hired an exterminator. I mean, would you consider exterminators, serial killers because they kill pests from your home?
No, but the pest control folks would not feel the burning in their temple.
Do we know that?
Well, it's a good question.
Yeah.
It's an interesting question.
So the last part of his statement, and this is the most important part. I have excoriated myself over these things for decades and understand I have a sickness that is untreatable by anyone else other than myself. I'm going to pick up my girlfriend at the airport and we have an event to attend this evening. So please forward any questions to me here and I will answer them as honestly as I can. That was part of my self-treatment in my head, to acknowledge first and foremost, this is not right. You know that other humans have feelings. Do not look at them like they are yours to exploit. Do not hurt anyone. Do not hurt anyone. Over and over. I compartmentalized the selfish narcissism as if that was a different person, a person I hated and wanted to kill. Once I was in a haze and started driving to a hospital with a firearm and thought, if I kill myself at the hospital, they'll just bag me up and no one will be embarrassed or inconvenienced. I came out of it and went home. Self-preservation is still strong. I can't imagine that this isn't a real statement from someone. I was overwhelmed with joy myself that he acknowledged, bedwetting, fire starting, animal torture, even though he found a way to justify it to himself. Mild bedwetting, the fire starting seemed to be the biggest thing he admitted to and enjoying it the most, and sort of passing off the animal torture. But knowing those who came before us, those amazing profilers who found the things that serial killers have in common, and this is the top 3, this man has given me faith that there are people that can overcome these desires. And while I wish I could help find out how those desires get implanted, I don't care if it's head trauma or OCD or early childhood trauma. I do care that people like him have enough strength to overcome, for lack of a better word, the demons that can sometimes overtake our mind and our body. And I'm grateful that he not only worked hard and is apparently still working hard to be a good person, but that he was honest and forthright enough to tell us about it. And more cowbell.
And remember, if you've got a tip for Melissa, give her a call at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837. Or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com.